it's me, Jegaysus, and welcome to my strange and a little bit quirky kitchen opening. I don't know why we're doing this, but actually I do. This is because the video itself needs a very distinct trigger warning. I was gonna put up captions or text explaining it, but that's not gonna do it for this one. This video that's coming up here does have mentions of SA, kidnapping, other sorts of things in that line, all to do with this person's story. This isn't a regular untracing trauma, but this person is just now discovering his trauma. That's the interesting takeaway from this, and that's what I wanted to bring to light. I cannot confirm nor deny this man's story. His name is Jimmi Toro, he is an author, and these are new memories for him. So, I'm not going to say that they are fake or over-exaggerated, but I will say that they're very real to him. And if you all can respect that, I can respect you. Because it's very necessary that we support people wherever they are at. You don't have to invalidate somebody or their feelings or their stories. You can support them in their healing without trying to take them down. But with that in mind, I will also say that this is kind of how the Satanic Panic started. That's why I said I cannot confirm any of these claims. They are his and his alone. For the majority of the Satanists that I know and the Satanic Temple itself, it is an atheist society that would not have any participation in the activities described. If anything, those people are using the name as a shield. However, it also started with a book, Michelle Remembers, and Michelle recovering memories that were actually implanted by the police back in the 90s, and it led to a nationwide issue. So please do keep that in mind if you are going to share this video. Don't cut out this intro. And also be looking at it from the perspective of this is his story to share and his story to explain. But doesn't mean that we can hold anyone else culpable without evidence. But also believe that people are telling their stories as they know them to be true. I know I keep on saying that, but I'll say it one last time before we get right into the video. It is true for him. That means there was definitely some kind of mental abuse going on. It doesn't mean that necessarily every memory recovered was exactly how it is, but obviously for somebody to claim the things that happened in this video, that means there was definitely trauma. So I do want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that just because the actual crimes themselves can't be validated, that nothing happened. No, this person clearly went through something and is working through that trauma. And for now, you can skip this video. If that trauma is too much for you to take on, I totally understand it. It's heavy. But I accepted the invite to let him have this platform. And his artwork is amazing. So if you want to check out his book, it all goes into further detail. He's a really good artist. It's like dark and like graphic lines. Not graphic in terms of like gore. Maybe sometimes. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. But like, you know, like line work. It's line work. And it's very good. You'll see some of the art in the background of the video. Without further ado, Jimmi Toro asked if he can be on my show since he was attracted to the topic of untracing trauma. I said, why not? Let's hear your story. And this is what happens. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Untracing Trauma with your host, Jegaysus. And I have a very special guest today who is actually, I don't want to say an expert in trauma, but who has been through trauma and came out on the other side as more healed. And right now, I'll go ahead and jump right in. His name is Jimmi Toro. Hi, Jimmy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm very curious about why you named your podcast what you named it.
Yeah. So, I wasn't ready for you to interview me. Untracing trauma, I deal a lot in my TikTok and in my YouTube with talking to people who have survived religious abuse and religious trauma. And so I figured I wanted to get a more long-form conversational podcast going so that I'm not just talking to these people in comments, so that their story and what they've developed, tools they've used when leaving the church and deconstructing, or forgiveness they've given to their family, hopefully that resonates with other people listening who are in that situation right now, and it can help them kind of heal as they are growing. The name itself is kind of just a play on my last podcast, which was the Unholy Trinity. And I wanted to keep the UT So I named it Untracing, which isn't a word, because I thought it was more interesting than undoing. But
Okay.
untracing is like UT.
All right.
So tell us about yourself. Right away, you have a book named Heal that is out. People
Yeah.
can read more about your story at their own time as they pick that up. But what about you? Walk me through where you grew up, what your parents were like.
We can go there. That's fine. We can talk about the whole subject of trauma. It's really interesting.
Cool. Okay.
The reason I asked you about why you called your podcast what you called it, your answer is interesting because when it comes to religion and trauma, there is what you described. There are also groups that are religious based who participate in the abuse side of the trauma,
Yeah.
right? And that's been going on for centuries where you have these, they're often called satanic, whether you believe in Satan or not. They're often called satanic type of organizations. If we kind of start there, that might be interesting. So if you take an abuser, let's say like a father or somebody, let's say, who beats his child, well, that's child abuse.
Yeah.
Well, if you take that same person and that person child, well, it's worse.
Yeah.
Well, if you take an individual who not only a child, but repeatedly tortures in all kinds of creative ways and enjoys it, now you have a sadist. The
Right.
definition of a sadist is somebody
Right.
who enjoys inflicting harm on other people.
The pleasure comes from the pain that's being inflicted. Right.
They do find joy and pleasure in it, sadly enough. And the worst sadists are the ones who pick on the little children because little children can't defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only are they sadists, but they're like the ultimate cowards. When you get down into that really hardcore child abuser, they often organize in groups.
Mm-hmm.
They often turn religious. You know, they have their traditions, they have their robes they wear.
Yeah.
They organize their meetings in such a way. They have their rules, and everybody obeys the rules, etc. Like, if you
So what I'm getting, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sure
Okay.
people are familiar with the terms pedophile ring, right? As you're saying, like forming a group, and then you're saying from there it becomes more of a tradition-based and ritual-based.
Pedophile rings are a little different.
Okay.
Often, pedophile rings are like people going into business, like partners,
So
and
trafficking, yeah.
for trafficking. Like, I have a buddy in Fort Worth, Texas, who was abused as a Boy Scout when he was little, and there was a pedophile ring there. Since you bring that up, and they went to single mothers who had young boys, and they basically said, "Oh, we're from the Boy Scouts, and we want to, be a father figure since you don't have a father in the home."
Yeah.
And part of that pedophile ring were police officers.
Oh yeah.
Right, so they were all in on it. But that type of ring, they didn't get all religious like and wear robes.
So I'm saying this is kind of a separate thing from that, but same principle of, abusers grouping together and seeking out other abusers.
Yeah. So in my case, another interesting thing about this type of abuse is if you're a little kid, let's say, and you're abused, if you can find safety, because that's the one thing you want when you're abused. The one thing you want is safety, protection, same thing. If you can find that right on the heels of being abused, let's say an uncle abuses you and you go to your mom and your mom just provides that safety. You can literally release all of that abuse out of your system and heal from it right then and there.
Yeah.
But if your caretakers or your parents or whatnot are the abusers, which is often the case, you have no safety and you will literally suppress all of that abuse. People don't generally understand what that means. You don't just suppress the memory of it, because that suppressed abuse often comes tumbling back for guys. It's often in their early 50s.
In their 50s?
Yeah.
Really?
Often with women or girls, it's sooner.
Yeah.
So you can literally suppress it, have no memory of it, and live decades, and then it all comes tumbling back into your life.
Wow. Okay.
When it comes tumbling back, it's absolute horror. Your body doesn't just store the memory of it. Your body stores the emotion of it. If you are scared to death, or they tried to suffocate you, or burn you, or rape you, or whatever, the sights, the smells, the sounds, the emotion, the hurt, the
Yeah.
scared, all of it comes back. And not just that.
Like
When you're tortured,
compounded PTSD stacked together all at once.
yeah, well, that's what PTSD is. And
Yeah.
there's an acronym called CPTSD, which is
CPTSD.
for child, right? Well, when you are tortured, let's say, those fight and flight hormones rush through your body. Panic, hardcore panic attack. And that's a physiological thing. It actually happens. Your
It
body
scars your brain.
yeah, it literally shoots out cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
And well, when these memories come back, all of that comes back.
Yeah.
And so the adrenaline pushes through your body and the cortisol, and you relive all of it.
Is there any reason why 50? Is there any research into what takes decades for those memories and things to return, and why it's different in men and women?
As far as I can tell, we really don't know. Memories can come back. They can be triggered. An event can trigger them,
Mm-hmm.
or they can just come back. And that's one of the hellish parts of that type of trauma that's suppressed.
Yeah.
So
the flashbacks are just out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely out of nowhere. And the duration, you don't know.
Right.
So in my case, when I was about age 3 years old to about age 8 years old, I was involved in, I was a child in one of these satanic rings. And they did, we could get into some of the awful things they did to me. But
we can, yeah. I mean, we'll probably touch on that a little later. I want to know more, I guess, location and stuff right now. Let's get over the headline part of it. So like from 3 to 8, where were you located, and where's your parents in the group? How did this initiate, if you can remember?
Yeah, my dad was part of it.
Your dad was part of it, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in California. This mostly happened in a little town called Sanger, which nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't know it, and I'm lifelong Californian here.
It's Central California. It's one of the little towns.
Okay.
Central California, outside of Fresno, let's say.
Got it.
And these creeps, these awful people, they exist right in your own town.
Mm-hmm.
It's not do they exist? They exist. They're just really good at hiding it. They often get together, like in my case. In the whole world of child abuse, there's an acronym called SRA, sexual ritualistic abuse. It's a specific type of abuse, let's say. That was my case. And so over a period of 5 or 6 years, I went through hundreds and hundreds of awful things. And
I'm sorry to hear that. Shit.
Yeah, it's awful.
Full disclosure, I was abused at the same age, but probably a little less time-wise because I only had one person, but it was from 3 to 5. So I do have familiarity with what, what it's like to be on the receiving end, but that was a single individual in my family, and it was not ritual. So trying to exponentially increase that fear you're talking about and that pain, to imagine what it would be like if it were multiple people, and if it were, or like you said, on a repeating ritual basis, I can't imagine.
Yeah, well, most kids are abused. I think the statistic is 95% of kids who are abused know their abuser.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what's so annoying about all these headlines that you see now of drag queens reading books in the library are gonna molest your kids, and it's no, you should probably look at your boyfriend that you're dating right now, Mary Ann, because he's gonna be the one.
More than likely, you are absolutely correct.
So, your father, was he the one who brought you into this, or did he just happen to be part of the same group after you were groomed? How did this I mean, it's hard for you to say, I'm sure, because you were 3 and the memories are scattered, but do you have an idea of how that worked?
Well, it's an interesting discussion as to what turns an adult into one of these creeps, How does somebody become a serial killer?
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Well,
I'm sure you've looked into that. Let's talk about that.
I don't know exactly, other than most kids who turn out rotten have some sort of terrible home life. Often they were abused themselves. often their home life just wasn't stable in so many ways, and this and that.
Yeah.
Whether you pinpoint exactly how or why it can be interesting, but what is very factual is that there are an unlimited amount of child abusers out there. There's just a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
And from the words of a child abuser, one child abuser said, I am a master manipulator. I manipulate kids and I manipulate adults.
Right.
I was a father, a brother, a son, husband, and nobody knew I was turned on by five-year-old little girls.
That's the true predatory nature of them. People think predator because obviously they're preying on children, but they don't realize by predator, it means they are planning, they are manipulating, they are scheming, they're slowly wedging people apart so they can isolate their target. Like,
They are.
True predator.
They're really good at it. It's hard for, fair enough, it's hard for an average person to understand how an adult can do that to a child. It just makes no sense to most people.
Yeah.
But they view, from the mouth of another predator who said, when I abuse a child, that child is no different than a ham sandwich to me. A ham sandwich is an object that fulfills my need for hunger. That child is an object that fulfills my need to dominate and sexually abuse them. And from the mouth of another child abuser, my abuse is more addictive than a cocaine addict.
Yeah.
So these people, I have a hard time calling them people or even human. They're so subhuman. Another way that might help to explain this, especially if you get into the satanic abusers. So they claim they worship Satan, and well, their worst enemy, obviously, is God. You know, if you want to go down the God-Satan route for a minute.
Sure.
Well, they pretty much suggest or say that, well, the thing that we are going to harm, kill, and abuse the one thing that is most precious to God, little children.
Interesting.
Right? And well, when you listen to it that way and you think, wow, okay, as awful as that is, it actually makes a little sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if God is their enemy and little children are the most precious thing to God, well, let's go abuse them. I think that's I think there's some truth in that. But I also think that it is a cop-out explanation.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was gonna say that sounds like a cover for them just wanting to abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Even all the rituals and this and that. What like if you go back in time, where the Incas or the Mayas, they would quickly turn to sacrificing little children, right? And one of their lame excuses was, well, we are offering the most precious thing that we have to the gods, our little children. And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, sorry, I don't know if we're up our 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, you're good. You can say hell now. We've already talked about some probably flagging things, so...
I think a lot of these rituals that they perform are just excuses to get off.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
that is the only thing that tracks in my mind. I think that's dead on. When you say... Okay, so in the group that you're sucked into or trapped in... Within your specific group, you say there were rituals and they were satanic. Do you know what kind of Satanism or what kind of rituals for you specifically? Because I know that there's like different types of Satanism, right? There's Levian and
well, like any like there's like 40,000 different Christian variations.
Yeah, there's 43,000 plus
something, right? Something crazy. How many Muslim religions are there? How many Jewish sects are there? Yeah. There's so many variations of Satan.
So did you know what kind or what sect specifically your abuse group was? I don't know what to call it. Abuse group doesn't sound right, but
that's pretty much
your pod of pedophiles.
I don't know the name. There were different families in this town and in some other towns. And they got together, and they often got together at a church, in the basement of a church, or they'd go to somebody's house who had lived out in the country a little bit, where it's a little private.
Yeah.
And they did. They wore their crazy robes, their white robes. Imagine the Ku Klux Klan without the pointy hats, right? That kind of thing. And they had their rituals, and They had a leader. My dad wasn't one of the leaders.
I was gonna ask that too. I was gonna say, did they have like a figurehead that they
Yeah, no,
followed?
he wasn't. My dad was too cowardly to be a leader. And,
Okay, but they had a leader though,
yeah, they did.
like a main priest, if you will.
Yeah, they did. And
Interesting.
they, th- I believe they used the organization and all the rituals as an excuse once again
Yeah,
to 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 satisfy their sick pleasures.
yeah.
And they would do all kinds of crazy things to kids. Okay, so what one example of is once I was buried alive in this coffin, right?
No shit.
Well, it gets worse than that. In
Oh,
the coffin was a dead body, a dead adult body. They had, if you imagine cutting like from your throat down to your private parts and ripping out the rib cage, tearing it apart, and tearing the guts out, right? So now you
mm.
have a cavity, and they stuck me and some other kids in these cavities of these dead bodies. Then they shut the
What?
lid. Well, the
And so there were other kids at the time. It
oh
wasn't
yeah,
like
there's a
you in
lot
the
of them.
center. There was multiples. Okay.
Yeah, yes, there were multiple families, and all the families had kids, and they're clever bastards. They don't just like my family. There were 10 of us kids, and they just picked on me and my sister. And
Oh,
one reason they do that is, or one reason they often do that is, well, if all the other siblings say no, nothing's happening to me, then you won't be believed.
yeah. That makes sense.
And yeah, there were plenty of other kids. And so if you imagine that type of horror of being buried in that, and then the lid shuts and the
I
little kid,
can't imagine that at all. That sounds like, oh, the
it,
worst of worst nightmares that I could ever have.
it's scary stuff, right? Well, to make it worse, after you're completely exhausted, you're pretty much given up. You can't bang on the lid anymore until your hands are bloody, and you can't scream anymore because you've screamed it all out.
How long of a period are we talking?
Well, that's the okay. So that's the thing with these creeps. Often in the realm of torture, you find this in like war, where good torturers know how to torture somebody right up to the brink of death and then stop.
Yeah.
Well, they do the same thing. They're good at that. Well, sometimes they fail. Kids die.
You know
Do
what
you
that
like?
triggered in me? Actually, it's a little bit further back when you were talking, and then you said meeting in basements, and then now though, where you said sometimes they go too far and they die. All that's flashing through my brain, and I know this is gonna make me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the but negates all that. But all I think is John Benet Ramsey
Sure,
basement,
sure.
the big party the night before her
Yeah,
death, where all the rich people were there,
yeah,
going too far, even
yeah,
ending up killing her, obviously. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I still am on the side the family was involved. I can't get over the family not being involved.
I don't know either, but I would bet money on it. Absolutely. So if you take that buried in a coffin idea a step further, right? After these little kids are exhausted and scared out of their heads,
Mm.
they open up the coffin lid, right? And what does that kid see? He does not see rescuers. He sees adults laughing and enjoying themselves.
Right.
It's pretty messed up stuff.
Mm.
And so you get used to this. This becomes your norm.
Mm.
I've seen other interviews of kids who've been in other situations that are interviewed when they were kids, and they talk just matter of factly, like, yeah, yeah, my dad would kill that baby and
Just
drink
another
its blood
Tuesday.
because that's just what you grow up with.
You're desensitized. You have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
because you're shutting down your emotions because
yeah,
your emotions are constantly fear based. You
yeah,
survival. You would shut down.
yeah, exactly. So I went through a whole bunch of those kind of crazy tortures and whatnot, and suppressed all of it. Um,
Like we're assigning defense mechanism. Of course you did.
yeah.
Yeah.
So about 15 years ago, in my story, uh, these episodes started happening to me. They weren't triggered or anything. They just started happening.
Okay.
Now, some people who relive trauma deal with it more physically. Other people deal with it more mentally.
Hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You could mentally get to a point where you want to commit suicide,
Mm-hmm.
but your body might still be healthy.
Yep.
In my case, it affected me very, very physically. So like a massive panic attack. Like a,
Yeah.
imagine being woken up at 2 a.m. completely out of sleep, and your body is uncontrollably shaking, and your
Yeah.
heart's racing off the charts. You literally feel like you're going to die,
Oh,
and
I've been there. I
and
have
you
panic attack disorder. I'm also a physical
exactly right.
one. Yeah. I ended up in the hospital with a mini stroke because I over
Okay,
hyperventilated until my brain got nitrogen
okay, yeah.
overload.
I there you go. I've been to the ER. I've been to the ER room so many times. So for 14 years, I had these attacks about average 2 or 3 a week. And I did not have a clue what was going on. I went to every doctor from traditional stuff. I've had every scope and scan on my body.
Yeah.
And
So
I've
this is
had,
before you retrieved any of the memories.
yeah,
Right now you're just seeing the physical
yeah,
symptoms and you don't
for
know what
14
they're
years.
related to.
Yeah,
Okay.
not at all. I've, I've seen every holistic doctor I can put my hands on, spiritual healers, you name it. I
Mm-hmm.
tried it.
Hmm.
And then a year ago, after 14 years, the first memory came back.
Oh,
Shocked the hell out of me.
yeah. I bet.
It
Do
was,
you
it
remember
was
specifically which memory it was?
well, okay, so memories are interesting. There's a guy, there's a psychologist named Dr. Vander Kolk, Kolk, and
KOLK?
he wrote a recent book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, I've heard of this. Okay.
Now, when all the memories started coming back for about a year, like one after another, hundreds and hundreds of them,
Yeah.
I talk about getting immersed in the subject. I read everything I could get my hands on, listened to everybody. Of all those things,
The subject of ritual abuse or of body memory?
all the above.
Okay.
Yeah, how to deal with trauma, what is trauma, how it works on the body, what it does to the body, why, how do you heal? There's a fair amount of confusion in the matter when it comes to healing too, because you have these different modality types,
Mm,
right? Some experts say, well, you should do body work and tapping and breathing, and I don't know if you know what EMDR is, the
yeah.
eye thing. And others say no, you should talk to a psychiatrist, talk it out, this and that. There are people who advocate types of yoga. There's some people who advocate drama or acting, you act out your memory like on a stage.
The issue is we have no idea how the brain works. And then there's Till Swan, who recommends getting really, 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 really high on specific drugs that are like more powerful than ayahuasca, and then,
Yeah, she's
drowning you in a pool as you're reliving that trauma so you can feel all of it, and then once you feel all of it, it's gone. I wouldn't recommend that one.
yeah, I know who she is. I personally don't tend to agree with her approach,
I don't either. I do
but
not recommend.
there's a lot of crazy approaches out there.
Yeah.
And anyways, so I like Dr. Vander Kolk's study on it. He's been studying trauma patients for like 50 years. He knows what he's talking about. But the fact that the trauma exists in the body is relative to the idea that the body keeps the score, right?
Hmm.
So it's in there. Well, one of the things he says that I actually agree with because it's my lived experience. He says when these memories come back, it's not uncommon you typically don't remember all of the details of the memory. You remember fragments.
Okay.
But what you're really going for in the healing process when you go back to that memory is you're more going for the emotion of it.
Hmm.
It's like, what are you feeling?
Hmm.
You feeling scared? You feeling lost? You feeling hurt? You feeling
Sure.
abandoned? You feeling a heavy weight on you? You know, or are you feeling the pain of something physical happening to you? Just physical torture, right?
Right.
And so when you could go back and identify that feeling, that's to me that's where the healing process starts. Well, a lot of people don't want to heal. You could say why. So there's a classic idea that a young girl, let's say, gets raped at a young age, and then as she grows up, she dates guys who abuse her.
Okay.
Right. That's been
It's
said.
seeking for what you know.
Well, it's familiar, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, if you have the option of two choices, two paths in your life, and they both suck, and one is live in that familiar abuse, live in it, be attracted to people who still abuse you, and the other is, well, I got to go face my pain head on.
Right.
And when these memories come back, they are the last place you want to go
Mm-hmm.
because they're that awful. And so, well, what do
So
I
for
do?
you, I mean, I feel like we're jumping ahead a little bit, but for you personally, was the part that allowed you to heal was sitting in those memories and sorting out your feelings from the situation, and that's how you were able to progress in your healing? Was that something that worked for you, or is there a different technique that you used?
So what I did is when an episode would hit me, once the memories started coming, they just started coming.
Mm-hmm.
And this Dr. Van de Kolk also explains that one of the awful things of post trauma coming back is you don't know when it's going to end. So
Oh
imagine
yeah.
you're like a bus driver and you're the adult you're on the bus, and behind you is a bunch of little yous. Well, if you got abused 100 times over a course of however many years, there's 100 little yous on that bus, and you have to go back to each one, and
Mm.
you have to deal with it
So
because
like each instance of abuse, not
uh,
just the fact that you were abused.
right, each
Wow.
one. Occasionally, I was able to heal uh, multiple abuses if the abuses were the same.
Okay.
Like you had the same type of abuse over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But that's more rare. But generally speaking, yeah. So when an episode or a memory would hit me, um, it was my job to go find that little me.
Mm-hmm.
So the adult me literally had to go find that little me,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it was really hard to find.
I
And
bet.
so because it took me a few months to figure this out, but I figured out that when those episodes hit me, I was literally feeling everything that little kid was feeling when he was being abused. That took me a little bit to put that together.
Yeah.
But once I put that together, um, it all went a bit more smoothly. So
Okay.
if a memory came and a major panic attack to my body, I've learned that okay, I need to name the emotion. What am I feeling? What is that little Jimmy feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's me, it's him.
Mm-hmm.
And once I could get better, let's say, at naming the emotion, then I got better at finding him. Sometimes I found him immediately. Other times I searched for days.
Well, yeah. I
Every
mean, just the
single,
fact that it's been suppressed for so long, but on top of that, your age was so young. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I can't
34.
remember probably 99% of my life at 5 or 6, 7 even. I only have the standout memories that most of us carry. Like, oh, I remember one day in fourth grade, my teacher did this one thing. But the rest of your fourth grade year is gone. It's not
Yeah,
something that you really keep, even if it's stored in there, until something triggers it.
yeah,
So trying to figure that out, but then also feeling not just the memory, but having to feel the emotion inside of that time when you were younger. That's a lot of work. That's hard.
it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that is interesting is that uh, it wasn't my job as an adult to go rescue that kid. It was my job to help that kid help himself. Remember, all he wanted was safety.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I could go whisper in that little child's ear. I could offer suggestions and this and that.
Hmm.
And the cool thing about the healing process is it's absolutely magical. You can literally go back in time, in the past, and rewrite the narrative, change the story, change the series of events. And
I
so
like that.
it works. It works for
Yeah.
me every time I did it correctly. It worked. And
Like the brain is a hard drive, and so you're just writing
well,
over the memory data.
possibly, but this is more than that because you're dealing with other. You're dealing with an event where that involves often a lot of other individuals.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
if you're getting abused by 10 adults surrounding you, they tied your little body down to a table and stripped your clothes off, and they're beating you and they're doing obscene sexual things to you. Uh, how how do you how do you how do you change that narrative because it involves other people, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's magical and it works. And even if you go study like Einstein and people of his level of intelligence, and many incredibly smart, high IQs, psychologists and physiologists and chemists and whatnot, they argue that the past, the present, the future, there's no real difference between the two.
Right.
And I don't have that kind of brain, but for instance, one example to give you an idea is I'll give you a mild idea, and if you want a really harsh one, I got plenty of those. But once I was in this room, little me was in this room, and I knew what was going on in the other room, and I did not want to go there because I'd been there
Hmm.
before. So there's several of us kids sitting there, and an adult, this one female came in, and she was going to pick me up and grab me and take me to this room. And I expressly remember her sweet, beautiful smile on her face. Oh, come on, little Jimmy, right? And as soon as I said no, her face went from a fake smiley face to off the charts evil, screaming and just. And she reached down and she grabbed me because you could grab a little 4-year-old pretty easy.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go find that little Jimmy one episode right in the middle of that happening. And I was able to
Hmm.
creep up behind him as an adult, whisper in his ear and say, "Hey, what do you want to do? Stop this."
Yeah.
And then each time little Jimmy changed the narrative, each time that happened, it surprised me. I had no idea what was going to come out of that little kid's brain.
Hmm.
And in this particular case, he wanted to freeze her. And so she reached out to grab him, or like all her muscles were tense, her face was just screaming angry, and she froze in a block of ice.
Love it.
And I was able to grab that little kid and hug him because that's all he wanted, and we got the hell out of there.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of what my dad taught me, but he never put it in the forms of healing. He always kept it to the forms of like nightmares, how to battle nightmares. He was like, call
Similar.
on your ancestors and bring them into the dream with you whenever you're stuck. And as
Yeah.
soon as they're there, you can control what's happening. Just tell them what you want them to do. And I would do something similar. It'd be like freeze, or like I want him to melt into a puddle.
Yeah.
And then the
Hey.
monster, or whatever it was, would just melt away. And I'd never have a dream about that monster again. And then the way he explained it is like once you defeat that monster, it's then on your team and you can call them for the next time. So I had like this Avengers team in my dreams that showed up, starting with my past grandmother, who then I had all these villains that we've beaten, and now I have a team of like 10 different monsters, villains, the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz, all in my dreams fighting against the bad nightmares. And
Yeah.
it's just such an interesting way of how you can control control subconscious trajectory that way, that you can go back into a memory or go into a current dream and reset the path that it's trying to drag you.
Yes. So every time I did that, or the little guy did that, let's say correctly, that particular trauma literally released out of my body. It's not there anymore. What was stored there for decades
Yeah.
is no longer and will no longer harm me. It works.
Yeah.
It is
I love it.
crazy, crazy stuff. It's Harry Potter magic stuff, whatever you want.
Does the type of I don't know what to say because my question was gonna be, does it have a specific name, this method?
Uh,
Like if I were a viewer listening right now, hi viewers, is this something they can like go get literature on how to do it themselves?
okay. Well, what I'm suggesting is, obviously I didn't make this up. It's been around for a while, but there are different. There's so many different modalities out there.
Well, do you cover this process in your book in
I
Heal?
do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's one resource they can use then.
Yeah, definitely. Even it's kind of like the religion thing. There, there are different methods that different psychologists use that all do a similar approach to that. Let's say,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
And in its broad category, it would be a modality of working with a therapist to talk through and go back in time. You know, I don't know that there's a name for it. I think it's too broad. It's just like,
It's like part of restorative memory, part of
yeah,
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 okay. Just regular cognitive behavior retraining.
yeah. But to do it, if you're new, if you think you want to go there and you're new at this, I would not suggest doing it on your own.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
Especially if you have an inkling or a feeling, or if you know that what you went through is pretty awful. Um, it's not unlike any skill. If you don't know how to play basketball, and you suck at it at first, and eventually you get better at it.
Sure. Sure,
Well,
sure, sure.
in my case, I had so many freaking trauma things happen that it took a year. Over the course of a year, I dealt with probably one of these literally every day.
Mm.
And so I
One of the
got really
memories or one of the panic attacks?
all the above.
Oh, the panic attacks that led to the memories that you then had to adjust and
Yeah.
accept. Okay.
Yeah. So for 14 years,
One a
no memories.
day.
The last year, 2022 was my ultimate year of hell because the memories came. Then I had to go. I had to
Oh, so this
actively
is
go.
recent.
Oh yeah.
The
Uh-huh.
14 years were ending in 2021, and that's when
Uh-huh.
you only started in 2022. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still on this journey.
Oh, I mean, that's why I wrote the book, because it's so magical. I mean, I'm an artist.
Hmm.
I got a whole bunch of art in there. That was fun. And
Oh, really? Like illustrations?
yeah, like stuff you see in the background. That's the cover of the book.
Awesome. I did see the cover. I didn't know you did it yourself, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I do for a living. I do art,
Very cool.
stuff like that. Anyways, and then I've started a nonprofit called Rescue 11,
Hmm.
and
I had
Rescue
that on my
11,
notes.
and
What?
we
Oh, go ahead. I
are
was gonna say, what does it do?
our mission is to go into communities. Start at the high school level. So high schools have clubs often. So we go into a high school, we set up a club. I mean, these high school kids, they are the target.
For abuse?
They're a target for the abusers, the high school kids,
Right.
and the younger generation.
Right.
But the idea is to go into a high school, set up a club, and have that club connect with the community, so that those kids will connect with the law enforcement in their town, the judiciary in their town, religious groups, nonprofits, any group that's organized that cares about protecting their kids. The
Hmm.
idea is to make the community aware that right in their community, these creeps are literally waking up every day, plotting to hurt, steal, and kill your child.
How do you do that safely? Because I feel like the teenagers being part of a group in one place would become a target for said groups because they're gonna expose them potentially. And if you're going to the police and the police may or may not be involved, how do you know you're talking to the right people without exposing the big
Uh,
secret to the wrong person?
well, that that is a good question because often you don't know they are that good at hiding it.
Well,
But
yeah.
but generally speaking, if you think of a community, um, and you gathered with out of that community, you gathered all the parents who cared about their kids, who are targets. You have a much bigger army on your side than they.
Sure. Oh, sure, sure, sure.
And so it's strength in numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so and it's making people aware. There are tactics these creeps use to get to your kids online.
Yeah.
I mean, these creeps will go sit in a mall and just watch kids walk by, and they will even pay other kids lots of money to be on their side to go talk to little Susie and her friends as she's walking by and offer her a job or offer her a modeling opportunity or something.
That reminds me of the serial killer. I can't come up with his name. Is it Jimmy Savile? Is that his
Well, yeah,
modus?
they do the same thing. And these child abusers who kill children, they're no different than serial murderers.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, Jimmy Savile was also going after teenage boys and then
Yeah,
killing them after he sadistically tortured and raped them.
yeah,
But
Jeffrey.
I don't know if that's his name, but someone will correct me maybe. But that was the
Yeah,
thing. His first victim that he had after he'd already groomed him to become a victim, he said, like, the way to make it stop is if you go recruit other boys, go to your
yep,
friends, bring
yeah,
me another boy. And
yeah,
then throughout that process, he started paying him like, $200 for every boy you get over
yeah.
here.
They do.
And he did. He was just offering up his friends to this guy who he knew was going to kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another thing to know about these creeps is they. So if you have a classic business where you have a brothel and you have customers, they're usually men, and they pay you money, and you go send them down into a room, and they get to have sex with some whore, right? That's a pretty
Mhm.
classic thing. Well, in the realm of child abuse, you have the same type of thing, but with young children,
Right.
and they're more hidden, of course.
Right.
Well, these young children,
And
they
they
will
trade
often
them like cards, from what I
they do
understand.
they will often age
My
out.
child for your child.
They do. Well, their product is children, and their
Yeah.
children will often age out.
Right.
It's not uncommon for young boys about age 8 to kind of age out of that. They're smarter and they can fight back a little bit.
And
Uh,
the like prepubescent thing is a part of it for most of
oh yeah,
these
a lot of these
targeting
scrapes
people.
if you're past 6 years old or 4, whatever the number is, that they're not interested.
Yeah.
They're not. So my point with saying all this is that uh, kids age out of their little creepy organizations. Sometimes kids are killed because they can harvest the organs and make money. Well, if kids are either killed or being aged out, they have to replenish their supply to keep the business going.
Hmm.
Like any business, they have a product, they sell it, and if the product's used, they have to get new product.
Hmm.
And well, if they're in your community, which they are, how do they replenish their supply? Well, they wake up every day and they have their tactics and they go about doing it and they succeed. Well, if
When
if
you
we
say
could have,
replenish their supply, are you meaning like
they need,
recruiting in new
yeah,
children, new families?
both, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
They need a supply of kids.
For some reason, you said replenish supply, and I'm over here imagining them just like having copious amounts of sex to try to breed more.
No, not so much that.
Okay.
I mean, there's a group in Eastern Europe, for instance. This shows you how clever they are. They could go kidnap little Susie right off the street and bring them into their compound.
Hmm.
But if they do that, the cops will have an APB out for little Susie who got kidnapped.
Yeah.
So they will kidnap little Susie and they will take little Susie and fly little Susie to a country in the world where it's legal for an adult to marry a child. That marriage
The
happens.
USA.
Susie gets new papers, and when Susie comes back, Susie's no longer Susie. She's Jane or something. Well, no
Yep.
one's looking for Jane.
Yep.
I mean, they're clever. They solicit girls who want abortions, and so they can have the abortions at their place. Now they have a child. So and of course, they are pretty brazen.
not to interrupt again, but I'm like having all these things memory wise that are threading together. But I did want to mention on here that it's something I talk about on my channel often enough. But 43 states in this country still have child marriage legalized on the books. 20 of those states do not have a minimum age. So last year, we were seeing girls as young as 10, but it theoretically could be 5 or 6 if the judge signs off on it.
Yeah.
Um, and then when you're talking about these people who are trafficking from out of country, one of the biggest issues that we have in terms of child trafficking is the law systems at play don't interwork together in the way that they need to. They are, when it comes to children and tracking these abuse rings, they're not sharing a lot of information. So, like you were saying, if Susie goes missing, America's not going to know that. They're not calling America like, hey, Susie just went missing. Keep your eyes peeled. And then she comes over here and she's Jane. We've never even heard about Susie. So
Yeah.
it just continues to fly under the radar because we don't
Yeah.
have a system or an infrastructure for this.
Yeah.
Um, and that sucks. And then there was another part I wanted to say, and now it's escaping me. Mm. Oh my God, yes. And then, like you were saying, they targeting women who want abortions and offering them another way. There was the TLC show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. They had to cancel it after 2 episodes.
No.
That was called Adult Adoption is what it was called, but I don't remember the show name.
Right.
And it was very obvious. It's usually a married couple who wants to adopt an adult child, usually, 18 to 20 from one of the Nordic countries. And um, the second episode, this guy was blatantly obvious about his intentions. And flying her here, living in the house, and she was pregnant. And he was just very much like, oh, I just hope I don't fall in love with her. That'd be so weird. But when she becomes more like my daughter, I'm sure I won't. And etc. etc. And the producers were asking questions, and his wife was like, oh, this is the second or third girl we've adopted. I'm just hoping it's not like the last times because he cheated on me with her, and I said never again. But he found this girl, and he really likes her, and he really wants a daughter. So we're gonna go through with it. But I'm like, and then, of course, he abused her, and then she freaked out on TLC for allowing this to happen while the producers were well aware of what was going on, and they shut down the show. You can find the episode online, though. um,
Well, not that may surprise a lot of people. That doesn't surprise me at all.
yeah, well, it surprises me that they decided this is a good idea for a TV show, but it obviously shows that it's happening. It's a real thing. But Jesus.
Yeah. Well, do you remember Pizzagate a bit ago?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody talked about Pizzagate and how maybe the Clintons were involved or this famous actor or whatever. And okay, there's some interest there, but what's more interesting about Pizzagate is understanding your enemy. So,
Okay.
meaning you can have Pizzagate type of organizations at the highest level, Jeffrey Epstein, Clintons, and all that, or the same thing could be happening right in your town. And people
Yeah.
don't realize that when that these creeps order kids like on a menu. I want a 4-year-old boy who's blonde and blue eyes, or I want a 7-year-old girl who's Asian, or whatever. And different types of pizzas or food are just codes for that. So I
Mm-hmm.
want a pepperoni pizza with olives and onions. Could mean I want a black boy who's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is how clever they are. This is how underground they are. And so you can get all caught up into the Pizzagate thing about famous people and this and that. But what's
Right.
more instructive is that this kind of thing happens right in your own town.
Right, right. It's in the smaller communities that is so prevalent because if you're thinking about it in a way of numbers, how many elites are there? Like 100? That's only 100 people that could be running abuse. But if you think about how many people are in your community that have this disease, this sickness
Yeah.
of pedophilia, it's much more of a danger to your present life than somebody in Washington. You know,
Yeah.
it's a direct threat to your children. So that's probably where you should be focusing. Um, I will say though, I don't know how I feel about the whole pizza analogy. Like I do understand there's menus. I do. I believe that.
Well, then
Most like you
pizza's
said, because
one of
that's
them.
how a brothel operates. You know, I
Pizza's
want to
you.
order this girl with this kind of boobs
Yeah.
who does this as a skill. But the I don't believe necessarily that the pizza was used for the code.
Well, it
I feel like
was.
that's more a distraction from the real stuff going on.
Well, they also had. Well, you figure that they can't call on their phone and say, "I want a 4-year-old boy."
Yeah,
Their phone will get tapped. Possibly, if they get caught and it goes to court, now they have records.
yeah.
And so they do make up codes, whether it's pizza or other food items or
Oh, I believe they have like their internal codes for their internal rings. Sure, sure.
exactly. That's all Pizzagate is one example of that idea, which
Hmm.
shows it's this is a battle. You want to know your enemy. You want to know what they're up
Hmm.
to because if
Yeah.
they're right in your own community and they're plotting to take and steal and hurt your own kids. Good hell,
Hmm.
and you don't understand how they operate. Well, of course they're going to have a level of success.
So how I know we're probably getting a little into the weeds here, but how does it work where say you have these rings in your community and at the same time they're the abuser that a child has is usually somebody that they know. To me that feels like that means there's four people in this group. They're also having to recruit adults to
Yeah,
be the person to bring in the children.
of
How are
course.
they convincing adults that had no leaning towards abuse in the first place? How are they getting them to become abusers?
It's money.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you own a brothel, going back to that, you it's a business. You make money.
So
More
it's
people,
legit just the trafficking that attracts the parents in, just like the
oh,
actual monetary benefit.
it's a cash cow.
Ouch.
Yeah. So,
Like I can't even imagine like how much is your kid worth? Like I can't
oh man.
imagine that going through somebody's brain, being like, my kid 25,000 would be.
Yeah, but if you are a parent and you're strung out on drugs, down on your luck, a whole host of things,
Yeah,
and somebody offers a price for your child, it happens all the time. You would never do it. I would never do
it's
it. But
fucked up.
no, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, very much so, right? But yeah, there are statistics out there. I don't like quoting a lot of them because I really don't know the source of them, but
Mm.
there are so many out there that suggest that human trafficking is a multi international billions of dollars. I don't doubt it.
For sure. Yeah.
And so if that many dollars are flowing in and out of a business, because that's a business,
Yeah.
and so yeah, you know, sure there are the ritualistic creeps who just do it because it's their strange religion. There are the one-offs like the serial killer who will just do it on their own.
Hmm.
Then there are these organizations who are
Hmm.
very well organized, very well funded. They often have allies in law enforcement in the community or in the judicial system. I
Yeah.
mean, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and last year an ex-attorney, an assistant attorney general was busted for child abuse. A
Oh yeah.
mayor of a city called West Bountiful up here was busted. Uh,
That's what I was gonna say earlier on too, when we were talking about the ritualistic aspect of it, and just to like keep it in theme with my channel,
sure.
I wouldn't say that Christianity is as organized as these organizational abusers. However, you do see an awful lot of evangelical, specifically pastors, being arrested every single week. I think last week it was 12. The week before that it was like 10. But the week before that it was like 24 being
Yeah,
arrested for child abuse.
yeah.
Um, because again, they have this sense, even if they're Christian and not Satanist, there's a sense of, I don't know, I'm
Well,
holy, therefore I have more power. I don't know what it is that attracts these kind of people.
well, what? Okay, one better answer than that might be that these creeps are attracted to any organizations that put them closer to kids.
I was gonna say it's availability for
Yeah,
sure,
they
and that
will.
parents just trust their pastor for no reason.
Well, that's it. That's an easy one, right? Because you're
Yeah,
godlike, whatever. But they will join. They will go to work for orphanages, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts of
Boy
America,
Scouts. Yeah. Oh god, that's a huge
coaches.
amount of cases in Boy
Yeah,
Scouts.
tons of them. They gravitate. I mean, just a couple weeks ago in a little town here, guy started a gymnasium to teach gymnastics to young kids.
Mm.
They busted him. He had cameras hidden in the little boys and little girls' locker rooms. You know,
Hmm.
they go where the kids are, and they go where kids will trust them. Hence, you get the religious stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that is the bigger reason why you find them in religion. It's not. I think the God thing is a big front. It,
Yeah,
they want the trust of the kids,
yeah.
and if they can get to the kids
So their
after,
devotion isn't like I really want to spread a ministry. It's I want to work at a place, a future job where will give me access to children. Like
exactly,
those types are like 15, already thinking about how do I get myself
yeah,
in.
that's it. They want access to kids and or parents who trust them with their kids.
Right,
Well,
right. And
I'm a
pastor
coach.
is a way better job than babysitter, so I
I
understand
know.
why they went that route instead of the other route.
I'm
But
a coach.
Jesus.
Trust me. I'm a preacher. Trust me. Right? I'm a teacher. Trust me. Right? Yeah. It's not. You know. It's not art. It's not whether or not these creeps are in your community. They are there. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you could go on the national sex offender registry list, and I just live in a little town outside of Salt Lake, and the, I mean, a conservative Utah, right?
Yeah.
In a 1 mile radius, there are 10 registered sex offenders. You know what
I'm
that
gonna
tells
check
me?
mine right now. What is it? Megan's List?
Uh,
No.
there's several of them, but you can check while we're talking about. If there are 10 that are registered, that tells me there are a whole lot more that haven't been caught yet.
Let me. I've never checked my area, so now I'm like, I want to know just real time while we're here
Oh yeah,
how
you should
many are in my
absolutely do it.
area.
Yeah.
Map search near my device. I don't want to give them my.
So
But then I have to give them
while you're doing
everything.
that, if you look at the states around the United States, um, the number of registered sex offenders per 100,000 people average is around 150 to 200
150 to 200 per how many?
per 100,000 people.
Oh wow,
If you go to
that's
Oregon,
like.
for
Well, that's
instance,
is that 1% or 10%? I'm bad at math.
yeah, I'm bad at math too. It's too many. If you go if you
Too
go to
many. That's a good. Yeah, I
if you go
agree.
to Oregon, which I think is one of the highest, it's closer to over 700. Or,
Why the difference between states?
I have no idea. You know, maybe their laws are more
Interesting.
lax or this or that. Montana's high up on the list.
Oh
So,
my word. Okay, so
so if you have
let's
a
do like 3 blocks, I guess, maybe like in a square. So to the left, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
in a 3 block
Within
area,
one block, one block, one block, one block with my house in the center, there are 22 registered sex offenders.
and those are the registered ones.
Exactly.
The,
Those are the ones who have been caught and are on
there are
watch.
I don't know, but there are probably at least as that many or more who haven't been caught. That's crazy. Yep.
Whoa, the closest one to me is actually in violation right now. I don't know what that means, but they're red and they're violating their parole. That's scary. I'm
Yeah.
not a child, but shit. I mean, and that's the other thing is it's like they don't say if there was a abuse against children or if there was abuse against adults. It just says offender. You know, it doesn't clarify. So you got to stay on your toes, people.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
yeah. So I mean, we're about at that hour mark, so we can
Okay.
kind of start wrapping it up. But I did want to pick your brain about I know this might be like a deeper episode too someday,
Sure.
but growing up and watching what happened in the 90s around Satanic Panic
Yeah.
and the memories that were implanted more than recovered in the famous case with the entire town that just had more and more kids,
Yeah.
and then they redacted their statements after people were sent to jail, including their parents.
Right.
How do you feel that that story might be false and then your story is true? Do you understand what I'm saying? Or are you worried that it's a similar situation to the Satanic Panic in the 90s?
Well, one thing to keep in mind about all that kind of stuff is if little kids come out and say this and this happened, they
Mhm.
don't lie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you look at any particular news story like what you're talking about and say, okay, were there kids involved? And did the kids speak out? Did the kids say anything?
Well, that's what I'm was
That,
inquiring about because like the specific case, I can't remember the name of the town even, but the specific case that I was thinking over the town altogether just went into like mass hysteria, witch hunt mode.
right.
Um, there weren't any kids. There was the guy, one singular guy who interviewed Megan. I think her name was also Megan, and after like 10 session uncovered memories, and then she just kind of went along with his suggestions being like, did they touch you? And she was like, oh yeah, yep, they touched me. And then he's like, whoa, and then pointed a finger at this person, and then kind of
Yeah,
opened up to interviewing kids. And on their fifth hour of sitting in the police station, that's the first time they admitted, okay, they did this and this because they're kids in a police station. It turned
yeah,
out all kinds of, they weren't coming forward with their own admissions. That's the problem. But
yeah.
so I
You're
was
always
asking kind of the difference between that.
you're always going to get uh, you're always going to get that regardless.
Oh, and I just want to be clear. I'm not saying your story is false. I just
No, I
want to say,
mean,
how do you distinctually, like, how do you differentiate towards, like, say, if you're promoting the book, like, how can
yeah,
you kind of break that severance between what people think of the Satanic Panic versus your story?
yeah. Well, I don't like to talk about specific things I don't know anything about,
Mm.
right? But generally speaking, if I'm hearing you right, I my comment on it generally would be that this stuff happens way, way, way more than most people believe,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And okay, well, Jimmy, what evidence do you have to that? It's like, okay, well, I don't, right? I don't have all. I have my own
I
list
mean,
of,
you can look at the ones that are convicted. That's enough. But
yeah,
obviously, if they're being convicted, there's more who have not been convicted yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
It's just logical.
yeah, if you just go to the prison system and look at all the number of child abusers who have been sentenced and are guilty and went to jail, it's a huge number,
Yeah.
and 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 it's a known fact that most of these child abusers, if not all of them, don't change their ways.
Oh,
They
no,
don't
no,
get
no.
over
Yeah,
it.
I don't believe in rehabilitation. There's no
It,
rehabilitation.
it it just doesn't happen. Well, that tells you something. And then if you go into the prison system and you realize that the hardcore prisoners will kill those people,
Hmm.
it shows you even at that level who the worst really are.
Yeah.
And and there's too many stories. The abuse numbers are way too high. I mean, just like you looked at in your own little area, and you have 20 some. It's like, okay,
In a
multiply
four
that
by
across,
four area, 22. And like, this
multiply
isn't,
that.
we don't have apartments in this neighborhood either. So, like, those are individual homes. There's
Yeah,
22.
yeah. So it's prevalent. It's not a matter of are they there or are they not there. They are there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a matter of what the hell can you do
I,
about it?
that's the last thing I want to wrap up on too is how people can support your group for the Rescue 11.
Yeah,
Um, so I think the problem between that is like we know it exists, right? We know it's a problem. I think what gets confusing to people is when it becomes ritualistic, you know?
Yeah.
When it's tied to Satanism or another group, even if it's the elite Democrat Jews drinking adrenochrome, the conspiracy aspect of it can water it down, and it
Yeah.
almost feels like that's by design. That's how the actual rings are hiding by making it sound ludicrous. You know, like, oh, yeah, worry about Hillary Clinton. She rubs blood on her face every day. And then they, in the darkness, are doing messed up stuff themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if you want to get a hint of what's, let's say, more public, it doesn't take you very far to go into the art community or into Hollywood, the arts. And you can find the most twisted stuff in the movie industry, in the fine art community. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are artists who are doing exhibits of all this stuff in art form. You know, babies covered with blood. It's all that stuff you hear about in the ritualistic stuff is more and more coming out in the art world. There
Okay.
are right. It's there. Well, you can do it in some sort of art form and not get busted because you're not actually molesting a child, but you do an artistic version of it. You got to
Right.
be one sick individual to put that in art form
Right.
and you enjoy it.
Because you're selling it to a certain audience and you know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you doubt this, all you have to do is get a little bit smart and put a little effort into it, and you won't be a doubter after a while.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Oh, I mean, I don't doubt it. I understand that people are messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
For better or for worse, I am aware enough of that.
Yeah.
But, uh, yeah, I just want to make sure that your story gets across in a way that it needs to be, so that
Yeah.
people can also be aware of their own surroundings.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all. I just want to make sure that you aren't being written off as a QAnon conspiracy theorist and people instantly shut down. So I was trying to get
No,
away.
I appreciate that. If you talk to somebody long enough who either has been through abuse or claims they have, it doesn't take you long to figure out if they're faking it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody who's interested and wants to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk to them.
And who would want to fake it?
Well,
Hopefully
you
nobody.
do have some fringe crazy people out there, who will fake an epileptic seizure in an airport for the attention. There are
Yeah.
psychotics, right? And
Yeah,
there,
no, you're right. You're right. It's just so weird.
yeah,
Again, my brain, in the same way my brain doesn't understand being attracted to a child, my brain doesn't understand doing atrocious things to get attention. Like
yeah, yeah.
Pam or whatever her name is, who pretended to be a cancer patient for like
Uh-huh.
15 years and then never
Uh-huh.
had cancer.
Yeah,
Because she just wanted people's sympathy and
yeah.
thoughts and prayers. Like, what? What?
Well, fortunately, that's so fringe, and it makes the news because it's sensationalism, but
Yeah,
it's so rare. You
yeah.
know, I always say when it comes to abuse that's happening in your community, believe the kids.
Yeah. Oh, I think
It is
100%
so
of the time,
common.
listen to the kids.
It is so common for a little kid who's abused. Like I was on a podcast with this lady, and she was abused as her parents got a divorce. Mom married a new guy. The new guy comes in and abuses her. She cries out
Mm,
to mom and says, "This new guy's abusing me." Mom doesn't
hmm
believe her because, well, she's in love with this guy.
She doesn't want to. Yeah,
Well, the guy says, "I didn't do that."
right.
Believe the kids.
No, definitely listen to the kids every
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Um, yeah, especially because it's children risk everything to speak out. It's in their head, and the way that they've been groomed and threatened is either they're gonna die, or their parents are gonna die, or something's gonna go on. Your mother won't love you anymore, whatever line they're using. So they're
yeah,
risking everything to speak out. So if
yeah,
they're doing that, you should believe them because they just put it all on the line.
yeah,
And then the pain and the abandonment that comes with you not believing them is a
yeah.
whole trauma by itself.
It absolutely is. It nailed that. You're dead on right.
Yeah, you're looking, like you said in the beginning of the episode, you want to look to your parents for safety.
Yeah.
and you denying them that safety
Yeah.
fucks you up.
Yeah. No, it does. Not all trauma is rape and blood. I mean, trauma can be exactly what she said. Trauma can
Yeah,
be not being heard.
yeah,
Trauma could be carrying the weight of that around and
or not
nobody
caring,
believes in you.
not
Trauma
caring.
could
That's
be
awful.
being lost, being abandoned. It doesn't
Hmm.
just have to be the hardcore torture stuff.
Yep, very true. Well, I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it all together. I want to give you some time if you would like to let people know where to follow you or contact you, where to purchase your book, if there's a place where you get more of a benefit, like direct website purchases. If you want to talk about how they can get in contact with Rescue 11 or how to support them, this is your time to kind of
No, I
put that out
appreciate
there.
it. My website is Jimmy, Jimmi, Toro.com. Find the book there. Bunch of cool art and stuff. The nonprofit is Rescue 11 or rescue11.org. And you can get a hold of us there. If you uh, are interested, want to help, want to donate, if you know anybody who might want to help us set up a high school club in your area so that we can help excuse me, help your community be aware of these predators. We would love to hear from you.
Very good, very good. Do you have any like social media groups, like a Facebook group for these things that you participate in for the Rescue 11, or is it only if you're going to do like local chapters and stuff?
Right now, we're just starting this, so for right now we are just doing local chapters.
Okay.
We've got a few started, and everything's going really well. But they are chapters. Yeah, yeah. So we would get involved and make sure the agenda is correct and this and that
Okay. Awesome.
regarding these clubs. Yeah.
And so again, the book is Heal by Jimmi Toro, where you go more in depth as well as provide some illustrations, but go more in depth into your story and your healing process and journey.
Yes.
Um, so I'd say I recommend that if you're interested in this podcast episode, then you should also get the book and find out more. I'm going to. I haven't read it yet, so I can't say what it's like, but I will let you know soon. I'll do a review. Um, and outside of that, thank you so much for being here, Jimmy. Thank you for being honest and open with your experiences. I know that's tough in and of itself, but also part of the healing process. And I just hope that you are doing what you're already doing, which is continuing to advocate for children who often aren't being seen and aren't being thought about, even in the grand scheme of things. So
Yeah.
I commend you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing daily.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for giving this whole thing a platform.
You're welcome.
If we can help one or two kids out there, good grief, it's well worth it.
Yeah,
They are
agreed.
these kids are at such a disadvantage.
Yeah,
And so if adults don't step up, nobody else is going to. So the fact that you
or
allow me to come on, the fact that you talk about this subject, I really appreciate that. So
anytime, anytime. Like I said,
I
I would be
feel like
glad to have you back just to get more in depth into the weeds on this, because
yeah, we could. I feel like I've met an ally, and that's very comforting.
oh, good, good, good. I guess that's it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. If you are on YouTube right now, please go ahead, like, and subscribe to the channel. I do have other long form videos in addition to this podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or places like that, you can go ahead and click the little rating button. I know Apple has stars and so does Spotify. I don't know about the other platforms, but your reviews and ratings are the best possible way to support there. And if you want to join me on Discord to discuss more topics like this, you can always join our Patreon as well as the YouTube memberships. Both $5 tiers will get you access to join our group. Um, and with that, I will see everyone later. Okay. Bye, and thank you again, Jimmy.
All right, thank you.